Good evening, everyone. Welcome back to my channel. I am Angelica with In God's Timing. I wanted to do a brief follow up to share my journey since I have been in the transition or the process of being a becoming entrepreneur. Some of the emotions I felt, some of the just new things that I've been dealing with. Share with some of you all because one of my biggest things is I said along our journey and our process in life, we don't always hear people share the in between as they're getting to where they're going as far as the next level, different stages in their life. A lot of times we kind of hush hush and we kind of just go through the motions. So for me, I'm titling this video, Walking Your Purpose, The Struggle is Real. Okay, so it's been a transition. It's been a lot of mixed emotions as I've been walking in my purpose and even realizing what my purpose is as it begins to unfold more and more. Also, like I said, the struggle is real. You know, the challenges that come with it. And for me, the biggest part is walking by faith. So I've mentioned to people before, like, it's different when you say, okay, I walk by faith and not by sight, and people will quote scripture and different things. But when you actually experience those real emotions, or the word really actually becomes flesh, it's a whole different feeling. Emotionally, mentally, spiritually, everything. So just throughout my journey, just even understanding a part of my purpose, I've mentioned before on previous videos, I was given the vision in 2019. And God pressed on me, hard to start. And for me, I'm one of those ones, I don't care for social media. I didn't care to do videos. Just the different things that God was leading me to do. I was uncomfortable. I was nervous. I felt like I wasn't capable, especially for someone that has never worked in business, never even thought about being an entrepreneur, honestly, and to just jump out there. And I've been learning as I go with everything. And I've honestly been like that my whole life, learning as I go. And it's been interesting. It's been very interesting. Even just for God dealing with me from the aspect of trusting Him, okay, letting go of what I want, putting aside what Angelica wants, um, regardless of how it looks, how it feels, and just to keep moving. It's easier said than done. So throughout my journey, I see the different, I see the growth in myself. I see the transparency, even just the different people that I've met throughout my process. So even when I look back, before even God gave me the vision in 2019, it was like a season of maybe like 5 years when I became aware. I'm gonna say aware, and maybe like 2014, around 2014, I started realizing that I was being schooled as far as from the aspect that He was teaching me. I was getting corrected more, chastised, whatever you want to call it. He was dealing with me as far as, making some changes. And that's when I actually really started trying to make the necessary adjustments in my life because, going in circles, feeling like things weren't working out right, trying to go about, certain situations or just my life as a whole, feeling like I didn't have the proper mentorship or the proper guidance, just for certain things. And even me as a parent, myself, you know, you don't get a manual. You learn as you go. And I said, I think about the same thing with my parents. They did the best of their ability that they could do. And that's the same thing that I've been doing even before I had kids, living my life the best to my ability. But then when you begin to, I guess, self reflect and see yourself, and I got to a place where I had started crying out to God for help because stuff wasn't making sense to me. From the aspect of I was trying to do the right thing, from what I thought, I was trying to focus, do what I needed to do as far as just being an adult, my life, my children, everything. And it just seemed like things were still a little bit off. So I give that the scenario of I tell a lot of people, you can't run from God. A lot of times we're trying to figure out what our purpose is. What are we here for? What are we doing? I've even asked God that, Lord, what are we doing? So as I mentioned, I started to cry out to Him. So around 2014, I started realizing and becoming aware that I was going through a growing phase, a healing phase. I started realizing that God was counseling me, dealing with me as far as my own internal issues, dealing with me in reference to things I needed to let go, people I needed to let go. And I realized the more I began to change, people's true colors begin to show. Some doors closed and some doors open. And I know that's a part of the process. Um, Even when you're growing, right? In your growing season, some things have to be shed. Some things have to be destroyed, have to be removed. It's just when you're going through your journey of life and whatever your purpose is, and just in general, you go through different phases. So as I mentioned, I began to become more aware. So fast forwarding to now, even just spiritually, how much God has been dealing with me and even just speaking to me with the times that we're in. I said, the times that we're in right now are so prophetic, it's surreal. Like, it is so surreal. So even from the perspective of, living my life and moving and growing and maturing, I still have a relationship with God. So with him coming first and him being the center of my life, everything that I do, I'm seeing him moving in it. And it's amazing. It's scary. Can I be honest? And I like to be honest. I get nervous, because even just with my growth process, and he wants our maturity, so it's certain things that I've been led to do, that he's pressed in on me that was uncomfortable. I was a little fearful. Like I said, even with the entrepreneurship, I never thought about being an entrepreneur. There's certain steps that I've been taking and moves, faith moves that I've been making that I never saw myself even doing. Sometimes in life, especially when I talk about the struggle being real, we get placed in a box. Sometimes it feels like, for me, when you make mistakes, or, it's like there's no coming back. There's no redemption. And I talked about recently about that catch-22. And that's basically, difficult circumstances, the obstacles, challenges. It's like an escape room, feeling like you have no way out. That's how I began to feel. Like, even though I was going through the motions, I was getting older, I was progressing as far as, taking the necessary steps as far as whether it been school, my kids, just making adjustments and trying to grow and mature and build me, heal throughout the process of when him dealing with me. It still felt like I had a lot of challenges. It'd be times where it would seem like strategic things were still set in place. And I realized, even the more I begin to change, the more I begin to allow God to lead me in my life, that's when the spiritual attacks got even stronger. That's when I began to see more people around me for who they were. Even he allowed different people me to meet that had similar situations like mine. We could relate and identify. So I tell people sometimes, like, we may not even realize that you may already have been walking in your purpose. You may have already been walking in your assignment, your calling, and not been aware. So for me, I've always worked in customer service. I've always been a people person. So I would have times where people just come talk to me and tell me all their business or just want to talk or share things. Me personally, I wouldn't do the same, sharing everything with everybody, but I would listen. It's just a point where I guess sometimes people just need to talk. And even the things that I've shared in some of these videos, as far as testimonies and things that the Lord has brought me through, I would have never talked about or shared. When he was leading me just to even to speak, talk about this, talk about that, or whatever it is, it wasn't just for me. So then along the way, I was meeting all these different people throughout my journey, and my process, that could identify, that were dealing with hurt, dealing with pain, mental blocks, fighting the mental, strongholds, difficulties, that kind of can't get right spirit. You know what I'm saying? Like, just too much going on. Like, I'm trying to do the right thing, dealing with generational curses. And that was another thing. I began to become aware, or more observant of things that I was experiencing, things that I had experienced in my life, just even looking back, that it was in my family. It was in my bloodline. As far as my parents, I was looking at parents, people around me, certain things that I was seeing that became familiar, that I was actually able to zoom in, like, oh my goodness. Like, this is, the repetitive cycles and patterns, things that I was seeing in myself, things that I was seeing in people around me. And we weren't having those conversations. Like, we weren't talking about it. So when I would be the one that would be vocal and be like, nobody else sees this, this isn't normal. So I began to realize that I had learned how to operate and function in dysfunction, where it had been so many people around me, even affected me as far as toxic thinking, right? Certain type of mindsets that I had, things that we do and experience in our lives. We may not even realize how much we have been impacted by trauma, okay? How much we have been impacted by our upbringing and, how we've grown, how you grow up throughout childhood. It's so many different things that can impact your life. And I know with me and other people that I've spoken with, a lot of times we become numb and we put up a wall and we basically block out trauma. And the mind does that anyways. The mind is so powerful. The brain, everything is so powerful and amazing. How we will block out those things to be able to still cope, to be able to function. But I've learned even more recently, what you don't deal with, what you don't address, it will resurface. It will revisit. So those are some of the things that the Lord dealt with me about, where I would suppress certain emotions or certain things that I dealt with in relationships, or learning to forgive myself. Because sometimes when you make mistakes or we deal with certain mishaps, we end up becoming bitter, angry, frustrated. I wish if I wouldn't have did this, I would have been okay. If I wouldn't have did that. And I had those moments myself where I was like, if I wouldn't have talked to this person, or if I wouldn't have did this. So when God allowed me to self-reflect and see myself, he began to hold me accountable for my part, not giving a pity party, blaming it on my mom or my daddy, my children's fathers, relationships, things that I didn't finish or complete or execute. He began to allow me to self-reflect and see myself first. Then I could begin to be aware of those other things that contributed to where I was at. That's the biggest part of our growth in life as an individual. Acknowledging your part first and self-reflecting. So now I can identify certain generational curses. Now I can identify certain triggers that I may have, or certain things that I experience. So all of this plays a part of your purpose, a part of where God is taking you, where we're going. And as I mentioned, so many things, like I said, are so prophetic. That is part of the reason why I understand now why God pressed on me so hard to move, to go. Because of our mind and how we can't grasp certain things as far as in life, we wouldn't be able to fathom the plan that God has for our lives. If he were to tell us every little thing, even me, would you really go? Would you really step out on faith? Would you really trust God enough to be led to do whatever it is? Because sometimes that crazy faith or them faith moves, they're uncomfortable. They make you a little scared. At the same time, the enemy attacks even more stronger. Whole nother level of spiritual warfare. As that saying goes, new levels, new devils. So I said, for me, the perspective that I experienced was, like I said, feeling like I wasn't capable, that I wasn't adequate enough, like I didn't have the experience that certain people had. I missed and skipped certain steps. I did things backwards, just different things in my life. So when God began to deal with me as far as him being a redeemer of the time, how he restores virtue, value, how he will bring things that were once dead back to life. So where I became drained, even from people around me, where they were like sucking the life out of me, the company that you keep makes a difference too. He even got on me about my language, the things that I was speaking, that it is life and death in the power of the tongue. When I say I was being schooled and God is the realest teacher that you will ever have, he is. So even with the visions that he gave me and just a part of my purpose, even just what in God's time and, building family, building community, building his kingdom, networking with people. And what God is being so faithful, how he wants to see if you can be consistent. If what I place in your hands, will you take care of it? God is adamant about that, because you have so many people that abuse their gifts, abuse their talents. They don't really care about nobody else. It's all about the money. It's all about their motives is wrong. So if somebody that, for me, that's always worked in customer service and been a people person and been empathetic, having a heart for people, God will use all those different things in a part of your purpose. So even when certain things that I experienced in my life with the mental in 2007, who knew that those things that I experienced will be a part of my purpose now? So it baffles me sometimes, and it's surreal how much you hear about people talking about what they experience with mental health. I've had people call me up, tell me they battling all kind of stuff, so sometimes God will allow you to go through different circumstances and situations, even some of your own mishaps, but he'll use it for his glory to help somebody else. Because you can get all the business, you can get all the degrees, you can get all the money. But when I mentioned, when you don't deal with certain issues, when you don't deal with certain things in your family or address it and acknowledge it, it's still going to come back out. So I've seen people from all different levels that have money, don't have money. Parents gave them all. Some would lack, different perspectives or of a variety or groups of people that were still battling, still fighting, still had strongholds, still had things that were affecting their growth, affecting their relationships, affecting their children, affecting their marriages. The mental is everything. So being that when you have experience in certain areas, you can understand and identify, even though it may not be the exact same. We all have similarities and differences, right? So even though I may not have went through the same exact situation somebody else had as far as the mental, I can still identify, right? I can still relate to it. And a lot of the things too, people don't know what you've been through. They assume. So even with me sharing a lot of things I share, a lot of people wouldn't have never known unless the Lord until he led me to talk about things that I've been talking about. Because many times you have some that don't look like what they went through. They'd be shocked when you share your testimony or your story. So the part that really just, like I said, blesses me, that even in the midst of what felt like failure, when I felt rejected, like I wasn't worthy, like I couldn't come back from the mistakes that I made or the setbacks that I had, or I didn't have the resources to get where I needed to be because of strongholds, because of tactics and schemes and plots that were set in place. Because as I mentioned, it wasn't making sense. It was at catch-22. It was like I'm going in the motions. I'm doing the right thing. I'm changing. I'm cleaning up. But then it was like it was still strategic things set in place to kind of keep me held back. And God allowed me to realize that. So when he began leading me to start making moves, God will remove you out of certain situations for a reason. God will press on you to go do whatever it is for a reason, because it's for a time and a season. And not only that, he's preparing us for different things across the board, things that are coming, things that are happening. He's preparing you in your personal life, your spiritual life, right? Natural and spiritual. It's broad. So as I began to see, and the scripture that kept coming back to me, that I was led to read, was it Proverbs 3:5-7. Trust in the Lord with all thine heart, and lean not to your own understanding, but in all your ways acknowledge him, and he will direct your path. So different things that I was trying to question God, negotiate, like, Lord, well, let me do it this way, trying to put my hands in it and be in control at the same time, because it was uncomfortable. When God tell you to make big boy moves, that can affect your whole life, affect your comfort, it's uncomfortable. So that was the biggest thing he was dealing with me about, trusting him. Okay, learning to walk in who he's called me to be. That's what we have to begin to do as believers, as we're beginning to walk in our purpose, walk in our callings, walk in our assignments, walk in our anointings. It's all a part of his purpose. Those are even things that I had to learn to do. learning to walk in my anointing, my calling. And I'm still a normal everyday person. Some people get weird, they be too deep and too much, but anyway, let me keep going. So time is of the essence, right? Many times we feel like we have so much time. We age, we get older, things are happening quickly, things are accelerating. It's a lot that is going on. But God's word, his prophecy, scripture, when I say it's so prophetic right now, is unfolding, right? So God has been preparing us on so many different levels for things to come. And the thing about it is the understanding that I got from even God just getting me to a place with dealing with my own internal issues, self-reflecting, seeing myself, cleaning up, working on my relationships, him moving people out the way, me letting people go, just different, working on me, mind, body, and soul, right? He allowed me to see that nobody gets away with anything. That God holds each and every one of us accountable. This is why he presses in on us so hard to work on our heart. Because we know that everything flows out of the heart. Life and death, we speak out of our mouth because of how we feel. When we get in our feelings, our emotions, because of hurt, because of pain. Throughout my whole journey, my process, God didn't stop the pain. Okay, even when I told him it hurts, when it didn't feel good, when I was ready to give up and I was tired, he didn't stop the pain. But he taught me how to maneuver and deal with it. He taught me how to fight. Come on, the good fight of faith. But then the reality part, how to fight whenever I would have mental attacks, to fight whenever, I wanted to give up, or the kids were doing too much, or I would zoom in on too many different things, and stress and chaos, and, you just get overwhelmed. A lot of things that we experience in the world, you still deal with things internally in your own everyday life, let alone everything outside the doors. So he begins to prepare us for that. So when we begin to heal, when we begin to grow, when we begin to mature, he can not only use us to help and be a blessing to somebody else, right? I talked about being able to identify and relate to other people, but at the same time, so we can move out of the way. He gives us all the opportunity to make changes, to make the necessary adjustments, to heed his voice. The word says his sheep know his voice. So those that didn't want to listen. So that's why I tell people, I know this all the time. Don't wish bad on people. Because we've all been hurt, and this took healing and it took time. So let's be clear on that. But how people will tell folks, you're going to get what's coming to you, and how you did me. You don't have to do all that. Sometimes you got to learn to love people from a distance. But God holds everybody accountable. So if they did do something, God will address it and deal with it in his timing, not yours. Not because you just want them to be addressed and dealt with right now. It doesn't work like that. God moves differently. He's in the details. And just because you mad at somebody, don't mean that he gonna just go tear them up like that. But with the narrative throughout life, throughout the world that has been created, right? The matrix, whatever you want to call it, the facade that we've experienced. And now, like I said, with the prophetic being so strong right now and God's word manifesting, it's at a point, like I said, it's so surreal. And to still keep going and keep moving in the midst of the storm, in the midst of, what was it, maybe a few months ago, maybe 7 or 8 months ago, I did a video on a storm was coming. That was natural storms, okay? And then that was spiritual storms. Fight in the spiritual and in the natural. It's a lot that's going on. I talked about the eye of the storm. That's when you're in the midst of it. It's like the plot thickens. That's what we're seeing going on right now. So that's why it is so vital for people to pay attention. Like I said, it's nice to have things we want to prepare, but you got to prepare on levels. That means getting your heart right, getting your mind right. Yes, God keeps his people and he wants us to mature and heal, but many of us have been so damaged and broken. We can overcome this, though. We got to be positive. Many can overcome this. And iron sharpens iron, so we need each other. There's some people that may not be as strong. Everybody gets weak sometimes. We all have been vulnerable or naive in our life where we missed it. You know, people have to be careful about pointing the finger and saying what they wouldn't do, or if I was them, I wouldn't have did this. You know, we still correct each other, but you don't know what you would have did in somebody else's situation. You don't know what you would have did, you know, in a lot of things, but we'll still point the finger and say, oh, I wouldn't have did this like that. And many people are experiencing a lot of hurt and pain. So like with the 91st Psalms, you know, sometimes you got to move out the way and buckle up, because the enemy know that his time is short. As I mentioned, many feel like you have more time than you think you do. That's why he said, if he's pressing you to start the business, pray about it and ask God to lead you on what to do. If God is pressing on you to do whatever it is he's calling you to do or leading you to do. Come on. He leads his sheep, because a lot of folk been leading folk astray. There's been a lot of folk leading people astray. And when I say the struggle is real, everybody struggles. We all go through hardships. I don't care who you are. You deal with family struggles. Everybody deal with generational stuff. Everybody deals with internal stuff. Finances. It's just different levels on how people deal with different struggles, right? But I was talking to somebody this past weekend that the Black struggle is different. So when I talked about strategic tactics and plots and schemes that were purposely set, that we even hear many talking about or conversing about, that we ignore, those things affect many generation to generation, and especially this generation. But because we have the illusion that some are balling out and they on social media or they famous and they doing this and they getting it, you got a lot of people as far as in the Black community as a collective. I said, even myself, when I said I had to learn and even encourage myself or position myself around people that were positive influences, right? As God began to send the strategic connections, even for just on so many different levels, because you'll get discouraged. You know, when you're in a society, in a world that has tore you down so much, where you have had so many things put into place, or even if you make one mistake, that's it for you. For as far as Black folk, that be it. Your child or your kids or any of us make a mistake, that's it. Unless you go above and beyond to be like the in crowd. Everybody doesn't want to sell their body. Everybody doesn't want to twerk or snook and crook to get to where they want to be. Some people want to be honest. So being honest with myself and being honest with others, look, knowing that it's hard, it's challenging, but it's worth it. So gradually throughout this process, how God has just been allowing me to see, first of all, how good he is, and even me just being able to see how God has been dealing with his people. You know, a lot of times people think so many things are coincidence. I don't believe in coincidences where you having all these different wake up calls across the board, across the world. Everybody's becoming aware of the times that we're in, right? Even if some don't want to acknowledge it, they want to put the covers over their head. We're beginning to become more aware of generational curses, become more aware of the things that have been taking place in the world and the systems and the school system and our communities, you know, our families, things that we've been affected by, trauma, the mental, all of these things that are manifesting that is more clear cut now. We see it clearly, right? Different perspectives. So when we all struggle, we should be able to identify and relate, right? But as I mentioned, it's different. It is. And some people won't respect the grind or respect the difference in the struggle is different. It's a lot of people that are damaged and broken. Everybody deals with the mental, right? But who are the most common ones that you see when you turn on your computer screen or you turn on the news that are experiencing taking themselves out of here? Or experiencing, I've seen one that really, you know, a lot of them, but ones where I've seen were single moms that just gotten so tired and took themselves out. They weren't getting the help. They weren't getting it's just so much. Where all you see is everybody talking about their mental health and all this other stuff. A lot of them are minorities. That speaks volumes. So when I say God dealt with me as far as self-reflecting and seeing myself, that means I had to make the necessary changes. That means certain things that I used to do, certain moves that I used to make, I had to change. Like I had over my journey, like I said, before I started doing this, I became celibate. I started really striving to work on me. That's when the enemy really started attacking me. All that time after it had happened in 2007, where I had my mental breakdown and overdose and lost my mind and all that other stuff, that was years and years. Had never experienced spiritual warfare on that level. Mental attacks, anxiety, depression just hitting me, those fiery darts. Had never experienced it until I decided to make a change. Until I decided to really seek God for help. When I really started calling on him like, Lord, I need you. That's when the attacks got stronger. I began to see people who was really around me. That's when the vision came. That's when God began opening up doors, closing doors, drawing new people in, removing people. And things happen quickly. Quickly. I started off on Facebook. And like I said, the transparency of certain things I'm learning as I go. Everything. Even the technology stuff. I'm learning business stuff. Things that I never imagined that I would even be doing that can even be overwhelming. It's like going back to school. When God pushes you out into the unknown, feeling like you're not prepared. But all the while, he's been preparing you through different areas. He's been preparing you in relationships. He's been preparing you from the jobs that you had, relationships that you had, experience, come on, different experiences that you've had. You know, when you slow down, like my shirt say, when you slow down and allow God to really speak to you, because a lot of times we're moving so fast and we have so much outside noise, we can't hear him clearly. We miss his voice. Where God is, like I mentioned, I had been being schooled. I just wasn't aware. So what God will do, allow you to slow down. Excuse me. He'll allow you to take some hits, whether it be financial, relationships. He'll allow you to be touched. Let me get your attention because you're not listening. We've seen this happen these past few years, right? Many weren't listening. God has been speaking strongly these past few years. Come on, y'all better catch this 22. 22 is still here, baby. So when I think about how God is moving and, you know, even how he hasn't forgotten about his people, how you see the awakening and the wake-up calls all over the world, but even the wake-up calls in my people. Oh, it's prophetic. How God is using so many people in so many different ways. The biggest thing, I'm with people, be honest and be authentic in everything that you do. With love. Because you never know when you may need somebody. As I mentioned, it's scary, right? I get nervous. Like when I say, I ask people, have you been led by God like this? Or ask people about certain experiences. Sometimes you will get to a place in your life where it's just you and God. Even though it may be other people around, you may be married, you may be in a relationship, you may have kids, but it's you and God. Where can't nobody fix it, ain't nobody gonna be able to make it better. It's gonna be you and God, because he wants your undivided attention. He wants you to know that you can trust me. I've been showing you time and time again throughout your life how much I've had my hand on your life. How he's given warning signs and warning shots and wake-up calls. But because we get so caught up in our lives, and because so many of us have been so damaged and broken, and things we didn't even begin to experience or begin to manifest till later. When our sins mature, when those generational curses mature, and we begin to get a lot of these hits, and people wonder where all this came from. It's been there, it's just matured. So this is the reason why, the necessity of dealing with your trauma, dealing with your life. I had to go back so I could go forward. He had me revisit and deal with some things. So as he began, come on, he's our everything, right? We go to church, we speaking that good word, we eating this good food, but people not getting delivered and healed. That bothered me. It still bothers me. Where I will meet people that have all these different issues and, you know, going to church and they wanting the same thing. You going to church, but you're not being delivered. It takes conviction first. But if we're not being corrected in our homes, if we're not being corrected in our families, on the job, or being corrected in the church, how you expect people to grow? We end up stunting their growth. So we have a generation of a lot of immature adults and immature children, which I was one. So when you begin to get off milk and get on that meat and slow down and allow God to deal with your heart, deal with you, you got to be open for that. You got to want it. It was me being broken down to my knees, broken down because of mistakes that I made, experiences, being a single mama. It hurt because I'm like, Lord, I'm doing everything. I'm trying to do the right thing. I don't like drama. I'm trying to finish school. I'm trying to do this and trying to do that. So I was trying to do what I wanted to do out of my own flesh, out of my own will. And I was falling. I was becoming broken because I couldn't do it all. I had got to a point, like I said, where I cried out to God and said, Lord, I can't do everything. So then I had to begin to lean on him. And it's not always easy. Having faith, come on, what you believe, what you stand for. When you begin to stop just talking about it and you actually say, okay, I'm going to take a step. That's what he wants. I had to take a step. So my journey, my process, it doesn't look like everybody else's. Your journey, your race, whatever you want to, it doesn't look like everybody else. But we got a common, come on, end place where we trying to go. We all going somewhere. We trying to get somewhere. It's not a competition. The race isn't given to the swift or nor to the strong, but to he who endures to the end. So if you don't deal with your issues, if people don't begin to become aware how prophetic these times is right now, healing, maturing, sharing your story, sharing your testimony, come on, that's where deliverance come from. When you begin to acknowledge, recognize, identify, come on, that's a part of your healing. But if you can't even acknowledge you got a problem, or if you can't even acknowledge you got issues, if you can't even acknowledge you're wrong, where does that deliverance come from? So then we begin to see a lot of mental breakdowns, a lot of broken people. God is holding everybody accountable. The time clock being going off, baby. The clock has been going off. Yes, God's people waking up, so judgment. The enemy scrambling. We've had this illusion that's been painted that, oh, everything's okay. Don't let the smoke clear, because it's a lot deeper behind the scenes what the enemy is doing. This is why God is so awesome and so faithful and so great, because he prepares his people beforehand. He warns his people beforehand. I need you to clean up. I need you to work on yourself. I need you to get your mind right. I need you to draw closer to me. Because once you draw closer to God, come on, he draws nigh to you. Then he can use you. God will clean you up and send you out. I'm a prime example. Honesty is not easy. The word says the truth shall set you free. So I want to be free. I am free. I'm free, and I'm free in my mind. I'm free spiritually. I still have to fight. I still have to, use my tools, to be able to function daily. But the part where the release is coming from, we still got this natural bondage, right? We got spiritual bondage going on too, spiritual warfare and stuff like that. But it has been strategic things that have been taking place in this world. Setbacks. Innocent blood shed. The blood cries out from the ground. God can hear the hearts of his people crying out. So those times when you're crying in your prayer closet, or you're crying when nobody even knows. I'm talking about this for people in general. For God's people that may be even lost still, that's trying to find their way. He heard your cry. So when people get confused about this shaking, oh yeah, it's necessary. So this is why it's important to move out of the way. Heal, mature, grow up. as men, as women, all this bickering and this talking about this silly stuff, it's immaturity. It's like, do you want better? Do you want our community to grow? Can these bones live? Come on, prophecy. You gotta want it. People gonna always say that, you're gonna always have those naysayers. Oh, she don't do it like this, or he don't do it like this. Oh, that's such and such. They'll never be nothing. You got to speak life into yourself. I have to do it every day. I'm learning even from things that I watch, things that I see people, because God has so many different ways that he will use to help teach you along the way, or help you as far as encouragement. You have so many people that, and pray about who you listen to, but so many people that are speaking truth right now. Iron sharpen iron, right? It does. It makes a difference. It gives you that strength, that juice to keep pushing, to know that it's not just me. I used to think I was tripping, like, is it just me that's dealing with certain issues, or nobody's gonna say anything? Like, then I started noticing it in other people's families, and I'm talking it with people that don't look like me. I'm like, everybody just, this is normal. When I just begin to realize so many people normalize dysfunction and have become numb. But then we'll be confused why we have so many broken people. So if you got broken and unhealthy relationships and damage, I don't care what you get and acquire materialistically or paperly, you still deal with it. We see that happening. People with all the money in the world jumping off of stuff. For the love of money, come on, is the root of all evil. Is it worth it? So where I felt like I was behind, that I had messed up so bad in so many areas. This is why I encourage women and, even men, different people that are connected to me, and even just how I've been in my forward momentum within God's timing, and even Lord leading me to get into the trucking industry. I'm just things that I never planned on doing. But in my vision, it's not just for me. I like to build. I like to help other people. People need jobs. Some people need to be taught. We assume that everybody knows how to do everything, knows how to be a mother, knows how to be a father, knows how to love right, knows how to have know the basics, housekeeping, cleaning, business. We assume everybody's supposed to know. This fairy tale, stereotypical world we live in. But how can you get, now it's a possibility that some people can, acquire things over time and they just do it and they can get it. But the majority of people, everything is taught and learned. So if somebody's parents didn't teach them properly, or they lack parents, or, as far as being in their life, deficits, right? Those things begin to enable them. Those things begin to bring challenges and obstacles for their growth process. So sometimes it may take, when we say, Lord, or we'll ask, I need examples and role models. Those are the things that I pray for. I said, Lord, I need examples and role models. But what is it when God begins to use some of you and even myself as an example, as a model? We are all models. But what type of model are you? So even in my cleaning up, in my process, in my journey, and learning to trust the process, as long as you are living, you have the opportunity to change for the better. Don't let nobody ever tell you that you messed up so bad, because I used to think that. People tell you that too. Oh, they're not going to be nothing. God can transform you, come on, by the renewing of your mind. But you got to become open, being vulnerable to him. I've heard some people sometimes, all the time, talking about Eve and how naive she was and vulnerable and all that, and stuff or whatever. But I said, a lot of women, you would have ate the whole tree. Because how many times have women had men or even other women whisper sweet nothings in your ear, telling you what you want to hear? Let's talk about the feminist movement. Let's talk about some of our mothers, some of our aunties, some of our family members, people on the job. Right? Where we've all been gullible at some point in our lives, been naive and vulnerable. So I've even had to learn to be more vulnerable to Christ. Because when you deal with a lot of damage and trauma and hurt and pain, and even, like I said, many of us in the Black community and some others probably can relate, but we suppress our emotions. And like I said, you end up not dealing with it. People explode. They blow up, and people are like, where'd that come from? This don't make sense. Where you'll be holding on to stuff so long. So whoever said that we don't feel pain, that we don't hurt, we hurt too. You should see that now by the whole wave of people coming out. I didn't know. They saying I didn't know this, and I didn't know that. The division that we have against the different cultures in the Black communities. Right? A lot of stuff we didn't know. I would say this thing was so deep, baby. It'll blow folk mind. But many of the things that are taking place, God has been preparing us for it. Preparing our hearts, preparing our minds, getting us to a point, get your house in order, literally, preparing in the spiritual. The very things that we've been praying for, been asking for, but then too, his word. It's coming to pass. So yes, we still buckle up. It's not easy. We are on a journey. We're going somewhere. So don't give up. That's why I give the transparency of my journey within God's timing, because mine doesn't look like a lot of people's, and it's not, because I'm different, just like everybody else is. We look for the polished up and the perfection. But as I tell people, the word says God will perfect his ways through you. Okay? What a blessing to pay attention to your growth. Pay attention to how you change, because it takes place internally first. Growing internally, maturing internally first. The renewing of your mind, right? Knowing how to maneuver in certain relationships, recognizing familiar spirits, recognizing certain attacks or fights that come, because the enemy gonna fight you even harder, especially when I'm gonna be honest with you, when you start to make changes, being in a positive way and let God lead you, the attacks come stronger. So this is why it's important for all this bickering and this petty stuff to stop, because we need our men. Like I said, a lot of the things that I can talk about now, I went through a journey prior to this for healing. It took time. It took tears, being on my knees. It took whining. God he didn't play with me. He corrected me. He didn't allow me to have a pity party, because he'd be like, you finished? So that helped build my fortitude. Come on, my endurance, perseverance. You learn obedience through the thing. Look, Christ learned obedience through the things he suffered. So the things that I experienced from hurt, pain, trauma, bad decisions, and making the decision, the choice to begin to be obedient, that's when God can move. That's when he begins to move. Let me speak for me. When I became aware that he began moving. So even in the midst where it seems like I don't have this or I don't have that, come on, your gift will make room for you. So God has proven himself to his people and through his people. That's a whole word right there. So yes, some of you all were designated and are designated to help break generational curses in your family, to help bring your family out. Get out your feelings. It's hard. It hurt. It's not fair. But surround yourself around like-minded, like-faith people, because you're going to need them. That's why I tell people it's power in relationships. So when I didn't realize before the different people that God was connecting me to, whether it been from jobs, people that I met, people along the way, just different people, it was for a reason. But in his timing, come on, he allowed me to see what they were there for. It was necessary. It was strategic connections. That thing real. But the enemy sends people too, so don't become distracted. Because when he sees you begin to continue with your forward momentum, and you fighting and you pushing and come on, warring with the enemy in the spiritual and in the natural. Because you got to think about, you're going to have natural attacks and you're going to have spiritual attacks. But you got to remember that Who's operating through that person? A lot of times we look at the person. Sometimes some people are actually really, really wicked. And then you have some that have wicked characteristics because they're a little toxic, they're a little off. They just need some cleaning up. It's a lot of people out here that's hungry, that's broken, that's hurting, that want change. Come on. God has a remnant, baby. In this time, even some of our parents, this is the generation. So as I said, walking in our purpose. And yes, the struggle is real. The fights get real. But the battle is already won. The enemy's upset because there's too many people beginning to walk in truth, walk in purpose. Many people that are walking out of certain things, walking out of bitterness, walking out of rejection. Because when you can begin to let God deal with you and heal you, that's when the things come. Everything is in his timing. Come on. Whether it be your husband, the business, the job, whatever it is, you got to prepare for everything. You have to be prepared. So when it does come, God does things suddenly, unexpectedly. It's not when you feel like you're supposed to have it. Come on, that's some blessings that make you holler, be in church hollering, even around the house hollering, because I worship at home all the time in a church. But giving him honor when it's due, knowing that it's not you. He's using you, whether it be in your business, helping people, whatever it is, your assignment, your gifts, your calling, whatever it is, don't get it twisted. It's not you. It's God working through you. Come on, Emmanuel. Don't play. So y'all be blessed. Keep pressing and pushing. Don't give up. Sometimes you need to slow down. Okay? Like Pimp C used to say. Back in the day, that's what I used to listen to. Sometimes you got to slow down. And then too, so you can taste and see. Come on. How good God is. But then even see the salvation. So even though all hell and chaos is going on, come on. God is in control. God is allowing some things to be shaken up. So don't get weary in well-doing, because you will reap if you faint not. But it's vital to have his protection. It's vital to keep him first, because there's so much that's going on. Like I said, God don't play by his children. He does not play about his children. What a loving father is that. So y'all be blessed. Y'all have a wonderful day. I'm Angelica with In God's Timing, and I will talk to you soon. Have a good night.